next massive sort of input subsidy, next slide, is cooling water. Basically, water is a scarce resource and it's incredibly valuable, especially in the West, but also in other places where we have nuclear reactors, like the Southeast. And we are giving them either free or massively subsidized use of thousands of gallons of water, which we need for irrigation, we need for our cities, and that's a massive cost. The next set of subsidies is reducing capital costs. So tax subsidies is really the big group here. We have an investment tax credit for nuclear reactors, so they're able to basically write off their nuclear investment as a tax write-off. They get accelerated depreciation, so if they build a nuclear plant, they get to write it off in 20 years, even though that plant is going to operate for 60, 80, potentially even 100 years. We hope not, but they're expecting them to operate for at least 40, and they get to write them off significantly faster. The other thing that they have is tax-exempt bonds and standby support. So that's worth roughly $6 billion, and what it does is it gives the first 4 reactors massive subsidies up to $6 billion if there are regulatory delays or slowdowns that impede their construction. So basically, if they don't do a good job and get the permits and licenses up properly, we're actually going to give them money to cover the slowdown. It's a massive incentive for new reactor construction. The next big subsidy that is on the books right now is a 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour production tax credit. There's actually not any reactors that are using the PTC right now. This is for new reactors, and there hasn't been a new reactor built in the United States. But the first 6,000 megawatts of nuclear energy that's constructed will be eligible for the PTC. 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour is a significant shift in energy markets. And to be fair, we're also giving a PTC to the wind and solar and renewable energy, but those are truly clean technologies, and they're also not mature. We've been funding nuclear power for well over 50 years now. There's no reason that we continue to give them a production tax credit. So here we have operating subsidies. So these are subsidies that allow the industry to continue operating the reactors day to day. Price Anderson is really the big one. If we got rid of Price Anderson, it is likely that they would be unable to actually pay for the insurance necessary to continue operating. That's really the granddaddy of subsidies. The other thing is unfunded regulatory oversight. It's cost us $11 billion since 1975. That's not been covered by user fees. So this is running the NRC, running the actual oversight that's necessary to make sure that nuclear reactors are being run in as safe a way as possible. The next real group of subsidies is shutdown subsidies. So we give reactor operators a tax commission, a tax break for decommissioning reactors. We give them the other big one is waste management. So we're running Yucca Mountain, and we've assumed responsibility for nuclear waste. Well, we're assuming that it's going to be break even though it's a massive, complex investment that'll be billions of dollars before it's done. The federal government's not actually charging them for that waste, and so there's a huge issue there. The other is decommissioning shortfalls. So likely there won't be money for decommissioning when these reactors are actually shut down, and so a lot of that will fall on the taxpayers. In terms of total subsidies, and these are numbers from Doug Koplow, who did a report for Union of Concerned Scientists. The legacy subsidies, so reactors that are already constructed, has been 7.5 to 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a massive amount of money. I mean, that's much more than the...
How was that calculated?
He has a list, and I can send you to the report, but it's basically the total of the list of subsidies. And I only went through kind of the highlights of of what's in his list, but it's basically the sum of all of the subsidies that are available. And I can send you to the report. So the existing independent operating utilities, their subsidies is basically 74 cents to 4.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Existing publicly operated utilities would be 1.53 cents to 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And coal basically comes in at around 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and renewables come in around 10. And so this is what we're subsidizing nuclear reactors at. If we gave those subsidies to renewables, they would look significantly better. And obviously efficiency, which is the cheapest and quickest and cleanest way to reduce our energy costs, would be much better. New reactors, the subsidies are between 5 cents and 11 cents a kilowatt hour, which is just a massive amount of money. Next slide. So even before Fukushima, these subsidies aren't enough for Wall Street. Standard & Poor's is quoted, from a credit perspective, these legislative measures may not be substantial enough to sustain credit quality. Moody's, new reactors are a bet the farm investment. Citigroup basically says that it would bring any utility down to its knees. There's a reason that Wall Street has been absolutely unwilling to invest in their own money in new nuclear reactors. And Michelle will talk about how the government is actually trying to avoid making Wall Street investors put their own money into nuclear reactors with the loan guarantee program and other things. But the reality is that Wall Street thinks these are a horrible, horrible investment, and that's the reason that we have not had any nuclear reactors built in the United States. It's not because of burdensome regulation or anything else. They just don't make economic sense. And this has really been borne out by what's happening in other countries. The Finland reactor is a perfect example. It's 3.5 years behind schedule. It's 75% cost overruns. It's the same design that's being proposed for 4 U.S. reactors. And the other thing about the Finnish reactors, they're fighting over who's going to cover the cost overruns right now. And that's a huge battle. Arriva, the French company that is building it, does not want to pay for those cost overruns because they know that they're going to be incredibly expensive and there won't be any benefit from the project for them. We're seeing the same problems in France. And with my last slide, Fukushima has actually made this even worse, and we're just starting to see the real repercussions from what's happened in Fukushima. But it's made nuclear reactors an even worse investment. Warren Buffett, who is a huge proponent of nuclear reactors, has tried 3 times now to build nuclear reactors, and every time has found it to be a bad investment. Shortly after Fukushima, he said that the nuclear industry in the United States for new construction, he thinks is dead for a long, long time. And NRG pulled out of the South Texas reactor, which they were actually going to partner with TEPCO in shortly after that disaster. Their quote, "In the wake of Fukushima, the confluence of events that would have to occur in NRG's view in order to get reactors 3 and 4 truly back on track is extremely daunting, and at this point, not particularly likely." We've also seen the death or hopefully the death, at least the significant stalling of the Maryland reactor at Calvert Cliffs. And so those are the projects that were supposed to be the poster childs for the nuclear renaissance here in the United States. They've all fallen by the wayside. And just Michelle is giving me some helpful correction. Actually, the Finnish reactor is now 90% over budget, so it's even worse than when I pulled up the numbers before. So we're not seeing a nuclear renaissance, and the reason is because nuclear reactors do not make economic sense here in the United States. The only way we're going to build nuclear reactors is with a massive public investment, which will be bad for taxpayers, bad for ratepayers, and bad for the environment.